Drones, UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them, they've dominated the news lately. But what if the answer isn't aliens, but something even stranger? Today, we're diving into a groundbreaking theory backed by NASA's very own footage. Glowing plasmas in the thermosphere, or what some scientists are calling plasmoids. These mysterious entities exhibit lifelike behavior, and some researchers believe they could be the key to understanding the origins of life, or the true nature of many of these UFO sightings. Let's explore the science, the evidence, and the unanswered questions behind these glowing enigmas in the sky. So we're going to be reading some excerpts from Extraterrestrial Life in the Thermosphere, Plasmas, UAP, Pre-Life, Fourth State of Matter. This is a research paper that was published in the Journal of Modern Physics in February 2024. And here we can see everyone that contributed to this paper. Now, before we move on, if you don't know where the thermosphere is, let's just go over this real quick. So the troposphere is here down on Earth, anywhere from 0 kilometers to about 18 kilometers. And that's where all the weather activity and clouds are, hot air balloons, passenger planes, things like that. Above that, we have the stratosphere, which is above any weather events, any weather activity. A lot of planes and jets will fly there for a smooth ride. Now, the stratosphere also includes the ozone layer, which helps protect us from harmful UV rays from the sun and things of that nature. And above that, we have the mesosphere. So if you've ever seen meteor showers, things like that, that's where this is occurring. And that's between 80 to 90 kilometers. Now, from 80 kilometers up to about 800 kilometers, we have the thermosphere. So this is where the aurora lights are. This is where the International Space Station is. And this is primarily where this research paper is talking about. But as you'll hear in this research paper, these orbs are actually known to go below the thermosphere. And then above the thermosphere, we have the exosphere, which has spaceships, satellites, things of that nature. And beyond that is open space. Okay, so it says here, plasmas up to 1 kilometer in size and behaving similarly to multicellular organisms have been filmed on 10 separate NASA space shuttle missions over 200 miles above the Earth within the thermosphere. These self-illuminated plasmas are attracted to and may feed on electromagnetic radiation. They have different morphologies, so these are the different shapes that they take on: cone, cloud, donut, and spherical cylindrical. So anything from a sphere to like a pill shape or a tic-tac shape, if you guys have ever seen that tic-tac video that was released by the military a few years ago, and have been filmed flying towards and descending from the thermosphere into thunderstorms, congregating by the hundreds and interacting with satellites, generating electromagnetic activity. Computerized analysis of the flight path trajectories documents these plasmas travel at different velocities from different directions and change the angle trajectory of making 45-degree, 90-degree, and 180-degree shifts and follow each other. They've been filmed accelerating, slowing down, stopping, congregating, engaging in hunter-predatory behavior, and intersecting plasmas, leaving a plasma dust trail in their wake. So what they're saying is that these plasmas will intersect, one will collide with the other, and then leave a plasma dust trail behind it. Similar lifelike behaviors have been demonstrated by plasmas created experimentally. Plasmas may have been photographed in the 1940s by World War II pilots identified as Foo Fighters, and we'll touch on that here shortly. Repeatedly observed and filmed by astronauts and military pilots and classified as unidentified aerial anomalous phenomenon. Plasmas are not biological, but may represent a form of pre-life that via incorporation of elements common in space could result in the synthesis of RNA. Plasmas constitute a fourth state of matter, are attracted to electromagnetic activity, and listen to this part, when observed in the lower atmosphere, likely account for many of the UFO UAP sightings over the centuries. Let's just dive into a few chapters here. I'm not going to read the whole thing. UAP and extraterrestrial electromagnetic plasmas. Interstellar space and the upper atmosphere of Earth are permeated by plasmas. Plasmas are believed to constitute a fourth state of matter and may represent a form of pre-life or inorganic, non-biological life, as detailed in this report. Pulsating, glowing plasmas up to 1 kilometer in size and behaving similarly to simple multicellular organisms have been filmed over 200 miles above Earth within the thermosphere by 10 separate space shuttle missions, and they list all the missions right here. These plasmas descend into the lower atmosphere of Earth and when observed may have been classified as unidentified aerial phenomenon, or as some prefer, anomalous phenomenon. As documented in this report, these plasma-like entities have been photographed congregating in the thermosphere above and diving into massive thunderstorms below, gathering around satellites, generating electromagnetic pulses into the space medium, approaching and appearing outside the windows of NASA's space shuttles, changing velocity and direction, and making sudden 45 to 90 degree turns and following and even colliding and intersecting with one another. Yeah, so why haven't we heard about that? That's pretty crazy. So these glowing, pulsating plasmas in the thermosphere grow in size, replicate, are attracted to, and make contact and intersect one another, often releasing kilometers in length plasma dust trails in their wake. Yet others engage in what appears to be hunter-predatory behavior, tracking, then accelerating and piercing other plasmas that may be several dozen kilometers distant, even striking and intersecting up to 10 or more at varying distances from one another. They display all the characteristics of lifelike plasmas as defined by Alphen Giordani. Although plasmas in the thermosphere engage in behavior in all respects, plasmas are not biological entities, and their actions are not mediated by electromagnetic and other non-biological factors, including the incorporation of radiated dust. Plasmas may have high or low density, high or low temperatures, may be stable or unstable, and consist of positively and negatively charged particles, ionized atoms of gas, and whose basic interactions are electromagnetic. In the upper atmosphere, plasmas are believed to react and possibly form in response to intermittent turbulence, geomagnetic storms, coronal mass ejections, solar flares, eclipses, the waxing and waning of sunlight, atmospheric waves, and the incorporation of dust, all of which affect the shape, velocity, and behavior of plasmas. Plasmas can form complex, lifelike shapes as well as nucleus that may acquire DNA-like capabilities. For example, space is permeated by dust, and when a plasma incorporates dust grains, the plasma acquires an electric charge that sucks in electrons, which attract positively charged ions, giving rise to plasma crystals, which also contain organic matter, including fragments of carbonaceous chondrites. Electrostatic forces and the polarization of the plasma cause these plasma dust crystals to twist, spin, and form helical structures that can evolve into a double helix, similar to the double helix of DNA. These helixes can then be replicated in other crystals, and that the self-organizing ability of these crystals can affect other plasmas, which may also form a plasma dust crystal helix. Although theoretical, this exchange of electrical charges could be likened to horizontal gene transfer. However, there is no evidence plasmas contain DNA, nucleotides, or amino acids. These extraterrestrial plasmas filmed in the thermosphere may represent a non-biological form of pre-life before acquisition of RNA and then DNA. Further, when they descend into the lower atmosphere, they would likely be classified as UFO and UAP when observed. So what they're saying is they would be essentially a synthetic life form as we know it. Plasmas, space shuttles, astronauts, fighter pilots, UFOs, UAPs. These plasmas have been first photographed in the 1940s, identified as Foo Fighters by US, Japanese, and German pilots, and observed by astronauts beginning in the 1960s, and may have been recently filmed by military pilots classified as unidentified aerial phenomenon. Given the attraction to electromagnetic and other powerful sources of energy and their responsiveness to radio signals and sources of heat, it is likely that these plasmas account for at least some of the anecdotal UAP sightings as recorded by the U.S. Department of Defense Unidentified Anomalous Reporting System over nuclear power plants. These areas above and surrounding Hiroshima and Nagasaki, destroyed by atomic bombs in 1945, and Fukushima Prefecture, a site of a major nuclear power plant accident in 2011, and for numerous reports of UAPs approaching and following airplanes. These plasmas have been filmed swarming toward and congregating by the hundreds around satellites, generating electromagnetic activity into the thermosphere, and observed approaching and appearing outside the windows of NASA's space shuttles.
It started over window 8, then quickly moved towards the nose of the orbiter, and we tracked it through windows 1, 2, 3, 4, and now it's out what about window 5? It's moving away.
STS-115 reported and filmed a similar encounter, the commander describing them as translucent, flexible, not a solid object, metallic but not made of metal, and giving off light and glowing.
The best view we got was through the binoculars, and the best way I can describe it is there's some kind of reflective cloth or with a metallic-looking type of cloth of a structure that's definitely not rigid, or it's not a solid metal structure.
Not a solid metal structure rules out wreckage and space junk, as does their ability to change shape and direction, speed up and slow down, and produce a glowing illumination, which in nucleus void can often be discerned. And then here are a few more quotes from astronauts that are describing these orbs. On May 15th, 1963, while riding a Mercury capsule on his final orbit of a 22-orbit journey around the world, astronaut Gordon Cooper reported a glowing greenish object which was rapidly approaching. On June 4th, 1965, astronauts Ed White and James McDivitt spotted a huge metallic object approaching the Gemini orbiter. In December of 1965, Gemini astronaut James Lovell reported a bogey at 10 o'clock high. Capcom, this is Houston, say again, 7. Lovell, we have a bogey at 10 o'clock high. Capcom, Gemini 7, is that the booster or is that an actual sighting? Lovell, we have several actual sightings. We also have the booster in sight. And then the flight crew of Apollo 11, as reported by Buzz Aldrin in a 1982 interview, we saw outside the spacecraft something out there that was close enough to be observed by the three of us, and what could it be? Mike got out the telescope. It was oval shaped like a series of ellipses, but when you sharpen the focus it had an L shape. That didn't tell us very much. Obviously, the three of us were not going to blurt out, "Hey Houston, we've got something moving alongside us and we don't know what it is." We couldn't do that because we knew transmissions would be heard all over the world. It was very big and coming closer, so we cautiously asked Houston about the final stage of the rocket, the SIVB, which had been jettisoned 2 days earlier. Apollo, do you have any idea what the SIVB is with respect to us? Mission Control, Apollo 11, Houston. The SIVB is about 6,000 nautical miles away from you now. Over. And this is a quote from the British Ministry of Defense. They conducted a multidisciplinary analysis of UFO UAP phenomenon based on information over the last 30 years. And it concludes, and tell me if this sounds like any of the orb videos that we're seeing currently. Credited with the ability to accelerate to exceptional velocities and vanish, they can reportedly alter their direction of flight suddenly and can clearly exhibit aerodynamic characteristics well beyond those of any known aircraft or missile, either manned or unmanned. They are comprised of several types of rarely encountered natural events within the atmosphere and ionosphere. These events are almost certainly attributable to physical, electrical, and magnetic phenomena in the atmosphere, mesosphere, and ionosphere. The fact that the objects reportedly have the maneuver and acceleration attributes of an inertia-less vehicle reinforces the hypothesis that they are buoyant charged bodies, e.g. electromagnetic plasmas. Okay, so before we look at these photos, we need to go over this space tether that they're going to be referring to. So the space tether experiment was a joint venture of US and Italy and called for a scientific payload, a large spherical satellite deployed from the US space shuttle at the end of a conducting cable 20 kilometers or 12.5 miles long. The idea was to let the space shuttle drag the tether across the Earth's magnetic field, producing one part of a dynamo circuit. The return circuit from the shuttle to the payload would flow in the Earth's ionosphere, which also conducted electricity, even though not as well as the wire. One purpose of such a setup might be to produce electric power, generating current to run equipment aboard the space shuttle. Now, they ended up having issues with this tether, and instead of it just kind of dragging in space and conducting electricity like planned, it actually broke and was floating free, but it was still generating electricity. And so what we're going to see is hundreds of these orbs were attracted to the electricity that this tether was giving off. Now, keep in mind, this is footage from, first of all, it's from outer space, it's from NASA, and it's from the 90s. So this is a little old, but I think you're going to find it still pretty intriguing.
Looks like you got an object right in front of you, Mark. Can you look out there? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Never mind.
Discovery, we're sending you an orbiter state vector.
That's looking out in front of the orbiter.
Okay, we're seeing 3 or 4 objects. Can you confirm that it's just the one that's actually moving? The other ones are just reflections?
No, there are 3 objects. The one you see 2 rings right there. They're the ones we kind of had the late tally-ho on. The one down the bottom, that was the one we initially saw.
Okay, so what we're seeing here is this tether, the 12-mile long tether, and these here are plasmas. There's going to be some space debris, but we'll see in the video that not all of it is space debris. So these are plasma-like entities up to 1 kilometer in size.
Again, that call reporting that the crew can see the tether and see the satellite. That it's beautiful. Again, just moving into sunrise.
Guys getting the image?
Franklin, we see a long line, a couple of star-like things, and a lot of things swimming in the foreground. Can you describe what you're seeing?
Well, the long line is a tether, and there's a little bit of debris that kind of flies with us, and it's illuminated by the sun at such low angles. So there's a lot of stray light, and it's getting washed out quickly, but Claude is trying to do a quick, good job here adjusting the cameras.
Copy that. Columbia, Houston, that's a much better view, a lot more contrast visible. And how wide does that tether appear to be? It seems to resemble a much wider strand than we'd expect. Can you describe which way the satellite is visible on that strand?
It says here that hundreds of cone and cloud-shaped glowing plasmas with an internal nucleus filmed by STS-80 200 miles above an electrical thunderstorm. This is the electrical thunderstorm right here that we're looking at, and all these guys right here are the orbs that they're talking about. And this again is showing a closer photo of these orbs above this electrical thunderstorm. Again, this is above that thunderstorm, and it says that these 2 glowing plasmas have an internal nucleus, and these things are up to 1 kilometer in size. And here are some of the cone and donut shaped plasmas here. And here's an even closer up look at these ones. So you can see the glow that it has, and it has that the center of it is sort of a void. So throughout these 6 slides here, keep an eye on subject A. That's this plasma orb right here, a larger one, and then this is a smaller one. So we can see that their flight path should be intersecting, and it looks like A makes a change in angle directly to this other smaller plasma. And then it essentially cannibalizes that plasma and then changes direction once again and continues its path on this way. In that space tether I told you about, it says, as documented here and elsewhere, these plasmas were filmed engaging in complex interactions with one another and contacting and moving upon the tether, which was conducting electricity up and down its length and generating electron beams. Okay, and so this is to help us with some of these photos. So the length of the flight path as determined by Registax, it's a technology to take photographs and determine the speed of things. So with this technology, the longer the line is, the faster that object was moving. And you can see here the flight path of all these different objects. They're all going different directions and even changing directions. And they're also going at different speeds, as you can tell here by the paths. And so if you look closely here, they're showing us where a plasma trail would be left when 2 of these things collide, or one of them gets cannibalized. And you can see the tether right here. So there's an object here, there's an object there. They're coming in contact with one another. And then we can see that trail, that plasma dust trail in their wake. Now keep in mind, remember this tether right here is 12 miles in length. So these things, they're estimating these orbs to be about 1 kilometer in length, and they're leaving behind quite a large plasma dust trail. Now that's great. That's where everything's happening up in space, where we don't have to worry about it. But here's where things get interesting. Plasmas have been filmed by missions STS-96 and STS-106 approaching, then descending from the thermosphere into hurricanes and thunderstorms, or emerging from waning storms and streaming back into space. So they will fly down from space into these thunderstorms, possibly collect energy and shoot back up into space. Plasmas approach from different directions and speeds, often forming groupings of 2 or more, then descend and disappear into the thunderclouds in the lower atmosphere. In consequence, when observed from the ground, these plasmas would be classified as UFO and UAP. Thus, it appears that many UFO and UAP sightings are not observations or evidence of extraterrestrial spacecraft piloted by aliens, robots, or humanoids, but of plasmas that have been attracted to and powerful sources of electromagnetic activity in the lower atmosphere. Typical of plasmas in the thermosphere, plasmas descending into the lower atmosphere appear to accelerate to exceptional velocities, alter their direction of flight suddenly, exhibit aerodynamic characteristics well beyond any of those known aircraft or missile, and have the maneuver and acceleration attributes of an inertialess vehicle and resemble the buoyant charged bodies that have been classified as UAP. Now this is from STS-80. This is from STS-80, Space Mission 80. Now this is from STS-80, and they are showing an orb, a plasma orb that is descending into a thunderstorm. So this is another plasma that's descending down into a thunderstorm, and you can see that long tail that it has behind it. Now they're saying that it's an elongated plasma descending into a thunderstorm, possibly engaged in electron transfer and the generation of magnetic fields and electric charges and currents. Now these here are cloud and conical shaped plasma orbs that are descending into a raging thunderstorm 200 miles below. UFOs, plasmas, and Foo Fighters of World War II. As documented by STS-80, 119, and 75, plasmas descend into thunderstorms as a single plasma or in groups of 2, 3, or more, followed by yet others, such that entire fleets of plasmas may descend into the troposphere, which extends from ground level to 10 kilometers. It can be predicted that these plasmas might also be attracted to radio signals, sources of heat, and electricity generated by propeller and jet-propelled aircraft, and when observed, classified as UFOs, bogies, UAPs, or, as was common during the Second World War, Foo Fighters. A Coast Guard photographer, Shell R. Alpert, took a photograph through a window screen showing 3 cloud-like formations over the Winter Island in Salem, Massachusetts air station at 9:35 a.m. on July 16, 1952. This is an official U.S. Coast Guard photograph. The air station had radio radar and conducted sea rescues, and its facilities served amphibious helicopters and seaplanes. The weather and temperature at that time was between 88 degrees and 91 degrees Fahrenheit, with a dew point of 65 to 67.68. So it was muggy and lots of moisture in the air. According to weather.gov, as a general rule, the surface dew point needs to be 55 degrees or greater for a surface-based thunderstorm to occur. As can be seen from the photograph, the sky was dark and overcast, perfect weather for thunderstorms. Now, in the 1940s, pilots reported being confronted, toyed with, and challenged by UFOs and UAPs that were white and silver, often glowing or translucent and shaped like clouds, donuts, balls, spheres, etc. Allied pilots called them Foo Fighters. Hundreds of pilots and flight crews described the Foos as on fire, glowing, and sometimes changing colors from silver to white to a red-orange. For example, as reported by Allied Supreme Headquarters and numerous media outlets in 1944, airmen of the American Air Force that they are encountering silver-colored spheres in the air, either single or in clusters. Sometimes they are semi-translucent. There is no information available as to what holds them up like stars in the sky, what is in them, or what their purpose appears to be. According to the official military reports, the Foos were incredibly fast, capable of amazing maneuvers and impossible turns, and would ride alongside, above, below, and directly in front of U.S. fighter planes, which proved incapable of shooting them down. Initially, Allied pilots thought these were German secret weapons. However, German pilots also observed these fast-moving, round-glowing objects, as did Japanese pilots. The Foos were attracted to the planes. The Foos sometimes flew in groups that surrounded the planes or followed close behind. Typically, they would vanish after toying with the warplanes. These plasmas appear to be unique extraterrestrial entities completely different from life as we know it. Although the particles of dust embedded within are carbon-based, and despite their cellular structure and what appears to be a pulsating nucleus, there is no evidence these plasmas are biological or possess RNA or DNA, although it is possible plasma crystals within the plasma nucleus may have some DNA-like properties. What is noteworthy is that some targets remain motionless, and often the same line of trajectory as a single plasma speeds through space, piercing one after another and slightly altering its course to strike yet another stationary target, and often changing in shape and size after penetration. So they're saying that some of these things will intentionally strike other plasmas, and they will continue to grow and enlarge and become bigger. We cannot rule out the possibility that there may be outliers that evolved beyond automata. So there may be outliers that have evolved and developed intelligence. Now, this part I found very interesting. It sounds like they are almost describing some of these eyewitness accounts that we've seen recently in New Jersey. It says that they can arrange themselves into orbs, balls, and rings, display swarming behavior, change shape, and engage in group versus individual behavior. These behaviors include targeting, tracking, dramatically altering their trajectory, and accelerating to intersect other plasmas that hover in place or which are coming from the opposite direction. To speculate, perhaps it is these hunter-predators who are evolutionarily advanced outliers that exist between non-life and life. It is likely that all require electromagnetic energy to survive, for in its absence, they lose their stability and coherence and die. So now this data is from ARRO, and this is their UAP reporting trends from all the way from January up until present day, October 10th, just before we started seeing all these drones and orbs in New Jersey. Now, this isn't the first time that mysterious glowing orbs have been seen flying over New Jersey.
Sunday morning, hundreds of people reported seeing more than a dozen bright yellow or orange lights moving across the stars. Carteret police saw them too. Nobody knows what they were, although some have some interesting theories about visitors from outer space. Apparently, they were not space junk or meteors. NASA officials say the U.S. Space Command reported no large objects re-entering the atmosphere yesterday, and they say meteors usually move much faster than these lights you're looking at in the sky.
You notice they were flying in a V formation, and you know my theory, birds with flashlights.
Even prior to all these sightings, it says that 31% of the shapes are orbs, round, or sphere shapes, and 46% are just described as lights. Now, if you're just seeing something for the first time and you're panicking, or you're trying to describe it, but you just don't know what you've seen for the first time, yeah, sure, a glowing orb could also be interpreted as lights, especially if you don't get a close enough look at it. And then here it says reported UAP hotspots. We can actually see along the eastern coast there that there's quite a bit of activity that's being reported. Now, the UFO UAP hearings that we just had in November and brought forth a lot of eye-opening evidence and claims. Now, they provided this report that's called Immaculate Constellation, and in this, it details common UFO UAP shapes observed in defense. Now, the first one that they talk about is sphere or orb. Spheres were the most reported shape, with variations ranging from smooth, featureless orbs to spheres with visible openings or appendages. These objects' prevalence suggests a possible standard in UAP design or function, capable of high maneuverability and speed. The diversity within the sphere category, spanning from simple, polished appearances to more complex structures with appendages, suggests a broad range of purposes or technologies unique to the platform's mission and or the originator. And then they have other shapes here: disc, saucer, oval, tic tac. Now, what's cool here is that they actually have a table that describes each type of UAP. So the size range from small objects to those several meters in diameter. Speed capable of stationary hovering to rapid acceleration. Speeds surpassing conventional aircraft have been noted. So signatures, it says that they often lacked conventional signatures such as heat trails, which we have been hearing that these orbs are not being picked up by cameras that would be able to pick up heat signatures. Now, it says here, electromagnetic effects on military electronics reported. So it is likely that these orbs are the same plasma orbs or plasmoids that they discussed in that research paper. Colors, it says it varied gray metallic, grayish blue, white, yellow, and red, orange red being prevalent, which also lines up with the plasma orbs that we just read about. Surface details, ranges from completely smooth and reflective to having visible protuberances, appendages, concavities, and openings. And then behaviors, high maneuverability, including abrupt direction changes and the ability to hover, often observed to fly in complex geometrical formations and to operate in tandem. Atmospheric phenomena. Occasional disturbances in cloud formations and heat wave contrails have been reported. And then it says biological effects. Close observers reported feelings of unease and electronic device malfunctions. So that's all that we're going to cover on the Immaculate constellation document. If you want me to cover it in another video, let me know. I'll leave a link down below for you guys if you want to do some research yourself. Now, on the ARRO website, they did also have this fiscal year of 2024 consolidated annual report on UAPs. So it's just saying like the research that they did, where the money went. They're somewhat being forced to disclose some of this information. So one of the things that I found interesting is they were planning to deploy this GREMLIN network shack in Q1 of 2025. My suspicions are that they have already deployed it, being that New York called on the military and federal government for advanced detection so they can figure out what these things are. The idea that UFOs might actually be plasmoids is as fascinating as it is mind-bending. These glowing plasma orbs are unlike anything we typically associate with life. Are we seeing the early steps of life forming in real time? Or are they just a strange atmospheric phenomenon that has eluded explanation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're as captivated by this mystery as I am, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me as we continue exploring the unknown. Thank you guys once again. Dive safe and take care. Now, I personally have seen what I would classify as a UFO or UAP. If you would like to hear that story, let me know and we'll do that in a separate video. And if you have had any experiences, please feel free to drop those in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Hey again, Dive Team, I just want to let you know we have the Discord up and running. I'll leave the link down in the description. It's free to sign up. I would love to see you guys there and chat with all of you. Thanks.